Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Kneel. The command didn't cut through the air, it shattered it. Julian froze, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, the sound deafening in the sudden, suffocating silence of the VIP suite. He wasn't looking at the gun on the mahogany table, nor the encrypted tablet he had just failed to hack. He was looking at the polished Italian leather shoes of the man sitting in the shadows, and then, slowly, agonizingly, he looked down at himself. At the sheer indignity of white satin cuffs, the high-cut black bodysuit that left his hips exposed to the biting air conditioning, and the ridiculous, velvet ears perched atop his head. He was a top-tier corporate espionage agent, a ghost in the machine, a man who had toppled governments with a keystroke. And now, he was on his knees in a bunny suit, staring up into the eyes of the devil himself. 3 hours earlier, the night had promised victory, not this humiliating defeat. The venue was Elysium, a wandering underground club that appeared in a different global capital every month, catering to the kind of wealth that didn't just buy luxury, it bought silence. Tonight, Elysium had materialized in the heart of Seoul, inside the hollowed-out shell of a brutalist bank vault. The theme was predator and prey. Julian Vane adjusted the bow tie at his throat, staring at his reflection in the locker room mirror. He looked ridiculous. He looked vulnerable. He looked exactly like what he needed to be, invisible. "I hate this," he muttered into his comms, the tiny earpiece virtually undetectable. "Remind me again why I couldn't just rappel down the elevator shaft?" "Because the elevator shaft has thermal sensors and motion lasers, Julian," came the crackling, amused voice of handler Min in his ear. "And because the servers for Draxos Industries aren't in the basement, they are hard-linked to the biometric signature of the CEO, who is currently in the Diamond VIP lounge. You need proximity. The bunny servers are the only ones allowed within 10 feet of him without a full cavity search. Stop complaining. You have the legs for it." Julian scowled, tugging at the hem of the bodysuit. He was lean, wiry, and athletic, a build that usually allowed him to scale walls, not serve champagne to oligarchs. He was here for one thing, the Project Ethelgard files. Draxos Industries, led by the enigmatic and ruthless Cashin Drax, was rumored to be developing a bioneural interface that could override free will. Julian's client, a rival tech conglomerate posing as a humanitarian NGO, wanted proof. Julian wanted the payout. His sister's medical bills were a mounting tide threatening to drown him, and this job was the lifeboat. "Target is moving," Min's voice turned sharp. "Cashin Drax has entered the Diamond Suite. He's alone. This is your window. Get in, clone the RFID signal from his personal device while pouring him a drink, and get out." "Copy." Julian took a breath, composing his features into a mask of vacuous servitude. He picked up the silver tray holding a bottle of vintage Pinot Noir, poisonously expensive, and stepped out of the locker room. The club was a sensory overload. Heavy bass vibrated through the floor, thumping in sync with Julian's pulse. The lighting was low, bathed in deep crimsons and violets, casting long shadows across the masked patrons. Men in bespoke suits and women in couture gowns laughed behind Venetian masks, their eyes tracking the servers who moved among them like decorative livestock. Julian kept his head down, navigating the crowd with practiced grace. He felt eyes on him, hungry, dismissive, assessing, but he ignored them. He was a shark disguised as a goldfish. He reached the heavy steel door of the Diamond Suite. 2 guards, built like mountains of granite, blocked the path. "Service," Julian said, pitching his voice slightly higher, adding a breathy quality to it. 1 guard scanned him, the red laser grid washing over the ridiculous costume. "Clear. Go inside. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact." The door hissed open. The suite was soundproofed, instantly cutting off the throbbing music from outside. It was a cavernous space of dark marble, velvet furniture, and floor-to-ceiling screens displaying abstract digital art. In the center of the room, on a high-backed leather throne that looked like it belonged in a Gothic cathedral, sat Cashin Drax. Cashin was a man carved from cold marble and colder ambition. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit his broad shoulders with architectural precision. His hair was silver blonde, swept back severely, highlighting the sharp angles of his cheekbones and eyes that were the color of a winter storm. He was reading something on a tablet, a glass of whiskey resting on the arm of his chair. He didn't look up when Julian entered. Perfect, Julian thought. Arrogance is a blindfold. Julian approached silently, the thick carpet swallowing the sound of his footsteps. He activated the cloner in his wrist cuff. He just needed to get the tray close to the tablet in Cashin's hand. Just for 3 seconds. Your wine, sir, Julian murmured, stepping to the side of the chair. He leaned in, the tray hovering. The progress bar on his retinal display ticked up. Asterisk 20%. 40%. Asterisk. Cashin didn't move. He turned a page on the digital screen. Asterisk 60%. 80%. Asterisk. Julian's heart was in his throat. The smell of the man was intoxicating. Sandalwood, expensive scotch, and the metallic tang of ozone. It was the scent of power. 95%. Suddenly, Cashin's hand shot out. It was a blur of motion, too fast for a businessman, too precise for a civilian. Before Julian could react, his wrist was seized in a grip that felt like a steel vise. The tray clattered to the floor, the expensive wine shattering and staining the white fur of his cuffs red. Mistake number 1, Cashin said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that vibrated in Julian's chest. You're wearing the wrong cologne for a server. Servers here aren't allowed to wear scent. But you smell like gunpowder and cheap anxiety. Cashin twisted Julian's wrist. Julian gasped, his knees buckling as he was forced down. The cloner in his cuff sparked and died. Mistake number 2, Cashin continued, finally turning his head. His eyes locked onto Julian's, cold and predatory. You assumed I wouldn't recognize the style of the ghost of Macau. Did you really think a pair of rabbit ears would disguise you, mister? Vain. Julian froze. His cover wasn't just blown, it was incinerated. Cashin knew his name. I don't know who you're talking about, Julian stammered, trying to play the role, though he knew it was futile. Please, sir, you're hurting me. Cashin's lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He released Julian's wrist, but only to grab his chin, forcing his head up. Drop the act. It's insulting to both of us. Stand up. Julian stood, rubbing his wrist. He calculated the distance to the door. Too far. The guards were outside. He was trapped. What do you want? Julian dropped the breathy voice, his tone dropping to its natural, hard edge. Honesty, Cashin said, leaning back and crossing his legs. He looked remarkably comfortable for a man who had just caught an industrial spy. And perhaps a little entertainment. You dressed for the part, after all. I was hired to get a file. That's it, Julian said, standing his ground despite the ridiculous outfit. Project Ethelgard. You're building a mind control interface. I'm here to stop it. Cashin laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Is that what they told you? My competitors are getting creative with their briefings. Ethelgard isn't mind control, Julian. It's a neural bridge for prosthetics. It restores sensation to amputees. Julian blinked. Bullshit. I saw the schematics. Override protocols. Forced motor functions. Protocols designed to prevent muscle spasms during calibration. Cashin countered smoothly. But of course, a rival company would spin that as mind control to get a moral crusader like you to do their dirty work. You're not a spy, Julian. You're a weapon being aimed by liars. Julian felt the ground shift beneath him. Was it true? Or was this the silver tongue of a sociopath? I don't believe you, Julian spat. Cashin stood up. He was tall, looming over Julian. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a strange, magnetic tension. Then let me show you, Cashin said softly. But first, there is the matter of your trespassing, your attempted theft, and your outfit. Cashin circled him. Julian tensed, ready to fight, but Cashin didn't strike. He merely walked around him, his eyes raking over the spandex and satin. You have a debt to pay, Julian. You broke into my sanctuary. You wasted my wine. And you insulted my intelligence. Cashin stopped behind him. Julian felt the heat of the man's body against his back. In the ancient world, spies were executed. But I am a merciful man. I prefer corrective measures. He leaned down, his breath ghosting over the shell of Julian's ear, the real one, below the velvet costume ear. Kneel. And that brought them to the present moment. Julian knelt. Not out of fear, he told himself, but out of necessity. He needed to survive this room to find the truth. If Cashin was lying, Julian needed to get close enough to kill him. If Cashin was telling the truth, well, then Julian was the villain of this story. Good boy, Cashin purred. The praise sent a jolt of shameful heat straight to Julian's groin. He hated it. He hated how his body reacted to the dominance, to the sheer overwhelming force of Cashin's presence. Cashin walked back to his chair and sat down, spreading his legs slightly. Now? You came here to serve. So serve. He pointed to the shattered bottle on the floor. Clean it up. With your hands. It was a test. A petty, cruel test to see if Julian would break. Julian glared at him, his eyes burning with defiance. No, Julian said. Cashin raised an eyebrow. No, I'm a spy, Drax. Not a maid. If you want to call the police, do it. If you want to kill me, do it. But I'm not picking up glass for your amusement. Silence stretched, tight as a piano wire. Then, to Julian's shock, Cashin smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, sharp and dangerous. Finally, Cashin said, some spine. I was worried the suit had cut off your circulation. Cashin stood up again and walked over to Julian, extending a hand. Get up. Julian hesitated, then took the hand. Cashin pulled him up, but didn't let go. He pulled Julian close, chest to chest. The contrast was stark, the impeccable, armored suit against the soft, exposed vulnerability of the bunny costume. You're right about one thing, Julian, Cashin murmured, looking down at him. There is corruption in Ethelgard. But it's not me. It's my board of directors. They added the override protocols behind my back. I've been trying to lock them out of the system, but I need a physical key. A key that is currently in a server farm in Macau. Julian's eyes widened. Why tell me this? Because you're the best thief in the world, Cashin whispered, his thumb brushing Julian's lower lip. And because you look devastating in that ridiculous outfit. You want to hire me? Julian asked, breathless. I want to partner with you, Cashin corrected. His hand slid down to Julian's waist, gripping the spandex tightly. My board is trying to oust me. If they succeed, the mind control version of the project goes live. I can't stop them alone. I need a ghost. And if I refuse? Then you walk out that door, Cashin said. The police will be waiting. You'll go to prison for corporate espionage. Your sister's medical care will stop. And the bad guys win. Julian stiffened. You know about my sister? I know everything about you, Julian. I've been watching you for years. Why do you think the security was so lax at the elevator? Why do you think you were assigned the diamond suite? Julian felt a flush of anger mixed with admiration. You set me up. You lured me here. I invited you, Cashin corrected. The costume. Well, that was just a personal indulgence. I wanted to see if you'd go through with it. It proves you're desperate. And desperate men are loyal. Loyal. Julian scoffed, pushing against Cashin's chest, though half-heartedly. I'm not your dog. No. Cashin agreed, his voice dropping an octave. You're not a dog. You're a rabbit. And rabbits need to be careful around wolves. Cashin leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a claiming. Cashin's mouth was hot and demanding, tasting of whiskey and power. Julian meant to pull away, to punch him, to run. Instead, a moan trapped in his throat escaped as a whimper. He grabbed Cashin's lapels, pulling him closer, the adrenaline of the night transforming into raw, electric desire. For a moment, the power dynamic shifted. Julian bit Cashin's lip, drawing a drop of blood. Cashin growled, his hands tightening on Julian's hips, lifting him up and pressing him against the cold marble wall. Careful, Cashin murmured against his neck. Or I might decide to keep you in this room forever. Try it, Julian challenged, his voice wreck. I'll hack your smart lock in 10 seconds. I'd like to see you try, Cashin said, his hands exploring the lines of the bodysuit. Suddenly, the room turned red. A siren wailed, cutting through the heavy atmosphere like a knife. Cashin pulled back, his expression instantly shifting from lover to general. He tapped his earpiece. Status. Breach in the north sector. A voice crackled over the intercom, loud enough for Julian to hear. Armed team. They're not police. They're wearing tactical gear with no insignias. The board, Cashin hissed. They realized I was meeting someone. They're here to scrub the server. And us. Cashin looked at Julian. The lust was gone, replaced by a fierce intensity. They're coming to kill us, Julian. The safe room is behind the throne. Go. Julian looked at the door, then back at Cashin. He thought of his sister. He thought of the file. He thought of the way Cashin had looked at him, not just as a tool, but as an equal match. Does the safe room have a terminal? Julian asked. Yes, but give me your access codes, Julian said, ripping off the velvet rabbit ears and tossing them onto the floor. You hold them off. I'll hack the building's defense grid and turn their own security against them. Cashin stared at him for a heartbeat, then smirked. That's my system you're talking about. And I'm the ghost of Macau, Julian retorted. Do you want to live, or do you want to argue? Cashin grabbed a sleek, suppressed pistol from under the table and checked the magazine. He tossed a second, smaller firearm to Julian. The code is my birthday. But backwards. Narcissist, Julian muttered, catching the gun. Funny, Cashin shot back. The heavy steel doors buckled as an explosive charge detonated on the other side. Smoke poured in. Go, Cashin roared, taking cover behind the heavy marble bar. Julian sprinted for the hidden panel behind the throne. As he interfaced with the terminal, fingers flying across the keys, he could hear the deafening exchange of gunfire. Cashin was a good shot, precise and lethal, but he was outnumbered. Come on, Julian gritted out. He bypassed the firewall. He found the building controls. Asterisk turrets, active. Lockdown, engaged, asterisk. Drax, Julian shouted. Get down. Cashin dropped flat, just as the automated suppression systems in the ceiling deployed. High-velocity tranquilizer rounds flooded the entrance, dropping the assault team in seconds. Silence returned to the room, heavy with smoke and the smell of cordite. Julian stepped out from behind the throne, the adrenaline crashing, leaving him shaking. Cashin stood up, brushing dust from his impeccable suit. He looked at the unconscious hit squad, then turned to Julian. Impressive, Cashin said. You unlocked a military-grade system in under 2 minutes. Your firewall had a hole in the logic gate, Julian said, leaning against the wall, exhausted. You should fire your IT guy. I intend to, Cashin said, walking over to him. And I intend to hire a new one. He stopped in front of Julian. The tension returned, but it was different now. It was forged in fire. The job pays well, Cashin said softly, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of sweat-dampened hair behind Julian's ear. Full benefits, coverage for family members, and a very demanding boss. Julian looked down at the gun in his hand, then up at the man who represented everything he hated and everything he suddenly craved. The line between enemy and lover hadn't just been blurred, it had been erased. I have conditions, Julian said. Name them. No more bunny suits. Cashin's eyes gleamed with wicked amusement. We'll negotiate that during your performance review. Julian rolled his eyes, but he didn't pull away when Cashin pulled him into a second, searing kiss. The taste of blood and victory was on their lips. The spy had entered the trap, but the predator had been the one caught. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control of the situation, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you trust a man who blackmailed you and is saving his life? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,